What makes a shot look good? Is it the colour palette, the striking lighting, the location? It can be, but a lot of the time just having a well composed shot will do the trick, at least for now. Today I want to look at what is good cinematography, because whilst you can shoot at magic hour and create a pretty shot quite easily, that is only part of the job. You need to be able to tell the story through images. I'm going to look at the two major aspects of creating a good image, and then talking through how you can tell the story through your cinematography, because it's much easier said than done. There are a number of ways to achieve a pretty image through lighting, but I'm going to assume that you don't have the budget for 12Ks, orbiters or pixel tubes. If you are shooting outside, then it's not a problem as you can just use the sun, but make sure you backlight to add a bit of depth. However, if you are inside, you might find it difficult to light without lighting. Now you can always use lamps from around your house, grab a few sheets and then you have a nice source, or you could shoot by a window and use that as your key. I mean, that's what they use on a professional set, but with artificial lighting to keep it consistent. Using that technique at night may be a bit difficult though. To understand how professionals light at night, we need to look at this shot from Prisoners. At first, it looks like a simple setup. We just have the lights in the gas station and the headlights from the car, and then you have your frame. But it's never as easy as that. We can see on this diagram that Deakins didn't go overboard with the setup, instead using some jokers, HMIs and tubes, creating a nice backlight. You can probably do without all of this extra lighting, and whilst it won't look as good or clear as Prisoners, you would still be able to get the point across. Now, if you have a bit of a budget, you'd be able to get a generator and a couple of HMIs to create more of a backlight on the subject. I want to try and add more of what I've actually shot into these videos, but I haven't done that much at night. However, one scene comes to mind, and it takes place in a car, where we only had one small battery-powered LED. The shots were pretty simple. We had a couple of close-ups and a wide. When lighting the interior of the car, I ended up using the dome light as a practical and then the small LED to motivate it, as a dome light is nowhere near as powerful enough to light a face. On the reverse, I tried to do the same in the way of motivated lighting, but there was also a street lamp behind which added a bit of a kicker. When the car was moving, however, you can't have someone drive and act, so we wobbled the car and spun the light around to create the feeling that it was moving. I also went handheld so we weren't as stable. In the end, the scene turned out pretty well for what we had, but if I were to do this again, and what I would recommend to you all on a budget, would be to get a couple of China balls and some negative fill for an easy and softer look. The easiest thing you can do to make your shots look good is to compose them well. Even by just abiding by the rule of thirds and having something in the foreground, midground and background will make your cinematography look more professional. Let's look at Unsane for example. Directed and shot by Steven Soderbergh, it uses composition to its advantage, keeping the audience interested, and it's both that and the story that bring our minds away from the fact that it doesn't look as polished as we're used to. The lights are often overexposed, and we're usually at the same focal length. But it was shot on an iPhone, so we can look past that. It still looks amazing though, and more importantly, it helps tell the story. Most of you would have heard of the rule of thirds, as it's used in almost every shot in every film. Whether you are using it to place an eye, a character, a light, it's where the eye goes naturally, and it's where we want you to look. I won't go far into it, but if you have an interest in cinematography, you should already know how to use the grid, but really just have what you want the audience to look at on the cross point at the top. If you are shooting a face, then put one of the eyes here, or if it's a full body, then just the head. Of course, you can always use center framing like every single Wes Anderson shot. Doing this makes it easier to keep a well-balanced frame. I would also look out for creating leading lines in your work, as it helps guide the audience to what you want them to see. Ultimately, composition is the key to creating a good shot and telling a good story through your cinematography, and once you get the hang of using the grid, it will come naturally, and you may not even have to have it on screen anymore. There are so many different ways to portray a feeling through your cinematography, but I want to focus on just two: the colouring your scene and the movement. Colour is probably the easiest way to portray a feeling in cinema. You shine blue on a character and it creates a cold and isolated atmosphere. Orange shows warmth in a scene, and red can show violence but also love. And you don't need to create a set around a certain colour. even though many films and shows do, you can do the same in your costume choices and what lights you use. Assuming you're on a budget, you can just pick up some gels for your existing lights or get some cheap LED panels and put whatever gels fit the scene on them. But if you want to use blue or orange in a scene, just change the white balance. The other thing you can do to really immerse the audience is to use movement to your advantage. If the characters are drunk, then go handheld like they do in Another Round. If you want to show emotion, use a slow dolly in like in Interstellar. If you are unsure, just go static, as it's usually a very safe bet. I'm sure you've seen this example of movement all around the internet, maybe in a format like this, but it gets the point across. All of these can be used for different emotions in the story, but when you do use them, make sure it's motivated or it will just feel off. But overall, always think about what would help tell the story. When you move the camera or you do a shot like the crane down in Shawshank with them standing on the edge of the roof, then it's got to mean something. You've got to know why you're doing it. It's got to be for a reason within the story and to further the story. In the end, practice makes perfect. We need to think about all of these choices, from lighting to composition to movement, and we may never be able to do it instinctively, but we can keep going and keep making films, however good or bad they turn out to be.
We sat and drank with the sun on our shoulders and felt like free men. Hell, we could have been tarring the roof of one of our own houses.
Ultimately, good cinematography is not about creating pretty shots. It's helpful in engaging the audience and it makes it nicer to watch, but if it doesn't further the story, then what is it for? At the end of the day, you will be responsible for what the audience sees. The director creates the film, but it's your job to further the story through your craft. In the history of cinema, masterpieces have existed without sound, without colour, without a story, without actors, and without music. But no one single film has ever existed without cinematography. I hope you enjoyed this video looking at what is good cinematography. If you found it informative, a like is appreciated, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.